following up on, and it is on this man here, Cabinet Secretary Ababu Namwamba. All right, he has been accused and is supposed to appear in Parliament today amid claims of athletes' neglect. So that's another interesting story that we're following up on. He's a sports cabinet secretary, and he will appear before the National Assembly to respond to allegations of the neglect of athletes in the country, and among other things, explain the role of the ministry in facilitating Kenya's team to the Special Olympics in Berlin in Germany. Last week, the Olympics team members who appeared in the House raised concerns over their treatment, and the National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah also questioning Namwamba's performance, but also very interestingly, this coming specifically and especially from Kenya Kwanza leaders on the performance of Namwamba. I don't know what would be, your thoughts on that. Let me begin with you, Suleiman. So you have Ababu Namwamba, who's been quite on the spot lately because of his performance. Specifically, a lot of statements coming from those, leaders allied to the Kenya Kwanza team. Do they have less, confidence in his leadership? Where do you think the rubber meets the road on this?
I think what I would say is that the Cabinet Secretary is holding a very crucial docket that, if it is steered properly, would have had a lot of impact on the youth of our country. He is someone who is at the helm of how the sportsmen and women of our country are managed, to motivate them, to see how various talents can be nurtured and all that. But now, even as we look forward to his appearance before the House Committee today, my other issue is when I see a member of Parliament, I saw the Wasingishu woman rep, who is the Deputy Speaker, trying to also ventilate on the same issue on social media. Right. I think that is quite, it's not so desirable in my view, because these particular members have the leeway to do what they have done today. There is no point of prosecuting such issues on social media. Rather, the most important thing is to seek for proper and hard questions when he appears before the committee. For me, what I will say again is, since he sat at the helm of this particular ministry, he has not been able to motivate the sportsmen and sportswomen of our country. All we could see were those who are within the sports industry trying to lament, saying that they are not even receiving proper treatment. That tells you even those who have the potential of having some sporting talents have not even been motivated at all. Right. So today we expect him to respond to the hard questions. There were the questions of the Talanta, the Talanta app, which is even said not to be on the platform. When you even search for it, you can't even find it. Yet it's said to have been launched. So the big question is, whatever our executive is doing, whatever we launch, are they even there? That is the reality. And I think today is a very important day. My clarion call, all my request to the members of Parliament is, in the event they find him to be someone who is quite incompetent or inefficient as to how he's steering this particular ministry, they should do what the Constitution desires in terms of impeaching him, because there are so many Kenyans who are capable of heading this particular ministry. For now, I think it was quite not so fair to just prosecute him on social media before he's heard. And I think it's an opportunity for him to be afforded that a special opportunity to appear before the House today. But the upshot of it, he has not met the dreams of the youngsters at all, in my opinion. Right.
Ruto MPs turned political sword on Namwamba. That's what the Star is reporting here on the Standard. Well, you see the Caesar there, the Senate, the National Assembly, and the Cabinet Secretary in between there. But yako niko ya chini ya mwamba juu yangu.
Sports is a very critical docket, and sports is a big industry globally. Right. And I think it's one industry that we need to take seriously and ask very critical questions. Yeah. I actually like the fact that Namwamba wrote back to the National Assembly and requested, to explain himself. Because if you ask me, some of these things that they are raising, including the leader of the majority in the National Assembly and the Deputy Speaker, these are very spurious and very ludicrous allegations. Sports is not an industry that has to be evaluated on the basis of the ticket that someone flies on. We need to ask ourselves, what was the preparation that underpinned the journey to Budapest, for instance, for the World Athletic Championship? Were those preparations done in accordance to the standards that we expect of our athletes?
Yeah.
Well, the same thing for the Special Olympics in Berlin. You know, you cannot start reducing the minister to the level of who was received by who at the airport. I think those are very trivial things to start, calling a cabinet secretary to go and respond to in the National Assembly. Sports is very critical. They are very germane issues. People should not think that because athletes come from the counties that they represent, then they have a bigger say on who becomes a sports cabinet secretary. I mean, sports in this country is not just about a question of athletics. I know we are known for athletics, but there's a huge potential in other games. There's a huge potential in football, and we know that. We cannot say that a cabinet secretary is there to receive footballers who win Champions League and come back to Kenya. We need a cabinet secretary who will create an infrastructure that would make it very easy for any talented sports person to realize their dreams. So I would expect them to raise substantive issues. But, I mean, the way they are going about it, even if there is a problem in the Ministry of Sports, even if there is a problem with the cabinet secretary, I think raising issues of hosting people for lunch, breakfast, and
so you
dinner,
feel those accusations are not substantive enough to sort of summon a cabinet secretary to come and appear before the National Assembly?
Leave alone being substantive. They are very personal. I mean, the issues that are raised by some of these people are fairly personal. You know, we attack individuals who are being used to propel sports. We attack the cabinet secretary because someone hosted probably their relatives for breakfast and lunch when they came back from representing the country. I mean, there are substantive things that we need to ask ourselves.
Shouldn't it be a good sign when you see the leader of majority in the National Assembly calling a cabinet secretary who's been appointed by the president to come and appear to answer to allegations of mismanagement within his own ministry? If something goes down bad within the ministry, won't Kenyans go back to the president and say, you hired this person, you appointed this person to take over this ministry, why did it fail?
Let me tell you, this is UDA in-house bickering, yeah? They need to sort it at UDA. I expect, if there's a problem in the Ministry of Sports, I expect the different federations to raise issues. The Kenya Athletics Federation, for instance, I expect them to be the ones who are raising these issues. I expect the Kenya, the Football Federation in this country that is led by my very good friend and high school colleague, Barry Otieno, to raise issues on how the ministry is supporting the development of sports in this country. But when you have, and you see, this thing looks like it's fairly choreographed, you know. Like all of a sudden, all the UDA stalwarts are straying their guns on Ababu Namwamba.
So you feel that it's a bit of a political,
I mean, yes. You know, if they were serious, they would be raising very substantive issues that touch on the development of athletes and the pathway for success if you are talented in this country.
All right.
Yep.
Let's hear from Prof. then, Kennedy.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, Hezron, for saying like that. If you ask me, when you appoint someone to work, there is a JD and there is expectations, everything is designed. There's a performance contract signed by the minister and the ministry. Let us evaluate the performance. When I was an academic director, when someone complained about a lecturer, we used to do a survey from students to really give an independent opinion. So the origin of this is within the political circles. It's not within the leadership of the sports fraternity. So I find this is a very interesting situation. In fact, I would like to tackle this also with the resignation of the former KRA boss and the appointment of the new one, because you said he has appointed a Harvard graduate to come and head KRA. What was the reason why Gadi resigned? And he said, I'll resign to pursue my personal interest. For working for 3 years there, his interest was not within KRA. It tells you that the work environment could have not been great. And according to me, it looks like it was a forced resignation. And I want to urge Kenya Kwanza that the most important thing, if you want to be able to rule and govern this country, appoint someone with their credibility, give them an enabling environment to deliver. Because I heard when the opposition went to the street, they said, Azimio should give us time to work. Give Ababu Namwamba, give all those people you appoint with authority to work. We've seen cases whereby, as good as Michael Joseph, who was the CEO of Safaricom, going to become the chair of Kenya Airways, he didn't deliver. It does not mean he doesn't know what to do. does the environment in Kenya Airways allow him to do it? And we have seen Kip Ngetich was a great guy in this so-called KWS. He went to Uchumi and actually dropped Uchumi dead. So what we are saying is that just appointing competent people is one thing. The other is the people within the organization, the people within the fraternity where you work, and also your bosses, giving you an enabling environment to work will succeed. So I can tell you, even if Wataga is given this chance at KRA as the Commissioner General, but the environment is not good, he will going to disappoint Harvard, because Harvard is known for a good name, and if does not deliver, it will be like, is it Harvard that didn't train him, or it is environment?
But Prof, that's sort of preempting, you know, his
No, I'm just trying to say, I see them, they're very
boss.
related, because even Ababu Namwamba, we know him. He looks someone who is capable of delivering. But now, why should Ichung'wah, whom is Ichung'wah talking on behalf of? And what accusation does Ichung'wah have apart from the social media stories? I saw those things circulating here on social media.
So you agree with Hezbollah that the issues raised are not substantive enough?
Are not substantive, they are just political, let's say, witch hunt.
Okay. Can I very quickly as we wind up?
Yeah, personally, I believe that Ababu Namwamba is a performer. And if there are challenges that rise out of his performance, I think we need to look at the bigger picture. We have to look at the history of our sports. You also have to look at the whole ministry as it is. The ministry is not only dealing with sports. If we are to deal with Ababu Namwamba as a CS, then we are supposed to look at other aspects of the same ministry, because there is culture, there is heritage, there is youth affairs. There are so many things inside that particular ministry. And I want to also challenge Kenyans, my fellow Kenyans. We also need to be fair on our leaders. Some people we have given, or who have been given opportunity to serve. That is why most Kenyans are almost not going to be willing to take senior or serious positions, because you start to do something, something appears. I want to get out of the accusations of athletes. I want to tell you, of late, there are so many unnecessary things that have been running on Ababu Namwamba on the social media. Even with the Talanta Ela committee, that committee which was disbanded, some members who were there, you find so many nitty-gritty, so many unnecessary stories being spilled.
So you're saying this is sort of a choreographed kind of
this is
a
highly
campaign
choreographed,
against the cabinet secretary?
Highly choreographed by some particular individuals who feel that Ababu Namwamba should not be in that ministry. I want to submit as follows. Number one, Kenyans must first of all respect the people given responsibility to serve them.
Okay.
Two, we have also to give sanctity to particular offices. I think Ababu Namwamba, by accepting to go before Parliament, he is willing to explain what happened in that particular instance. But we also have to look at inherent problems in our sporting fraternity. There is a lot of problems which, if are not properly dealt with, there's a time when a certain member of the public was talking about budget, and they were saying budget the way it is presented in Parliament. It is because there is inherent problem in the treasury that produces budgets in that bad manner. I think even in this ministry, there are so many heads which needs to roll, and it is not Ababu's head.
All right. I want us to, yes, Suleiman, very quickly.
Zainab, let me just say this, that even as we expect him to shed light on all these particular accusations, when the Honorable Gladys Boschole talks about her hosting athletes in her home, at her home, for example, whereby they now share with her has certain serious concerns, I think that is not a trivial issue. It is a serious issue because it will affect us and our athletes as a country. We are a country that our youth are normally regarded as champions in that particular industry. Our sporting industry has been quite low. Now that has been our side, whereby the entire world could even recognize us, is it even fair to treat them the way they shared with the Honorable Cabinet, with the Honorable Deputy Speaker? I think that's a serious issue. Then the other thing is that this is a ministry that in the previous budget was allocated about 10 billion. This year, this particular budget was allocated about 12 billion. It is important for us to have a value for our money. This is a huge chunk of a budget that we need to see what he has done for the last 1 year. And I think for me, the best I have seen from his side is zero or nothing. There is nothing actually to speak on this particular cabinet secretary, because I expected actually him to be one who has motivated the youth in various sporting events. The best he has done was to maybe form a committee. Some musicians were added. The other time it was disbanded. The Talanta Hela one was formed, again, across all the 47 counties. It is even said not to exist. where are we heading as a country? And
so
I think
you're talking about accountability.
Yes, what I'm talking about is it is quite fair for him to appear before the House today to shed light on all these issues. So these are not trivial issues. This is someone who we want to be accountable on each and every question and on each and every coin that was allocated to that particular ministry. There is nothing political in my opinion.
All right, I want us to...
But let me just point out that he actually held a feat, rewarded athletes for, I mean, a very long period of time, athletes who have contributed to this country. He cleared off the debts, you know, for the big clubs, football clubs in this country. So, you know, we cannot cherry pick and say because of this one instance, because of a few individuals who went visiting a leaders. I mean, there are so many Kenyans. If you want to audit what Ababu has done, we need to do that with due diligence and ask ourselves, within the short period of time that he's been there, what has he managed to do and what is he planning to do going forward?
And we'll follow up on that as well as he appears before the committee today to answer to some of those questions. Meanwhile, just to get into our conversation this morning, I want us to take a look at a statement that was made yesterday by the Deputy President with regard to the ongoing bipartisan talks in the country. We'll be back after that.
Nothing will come out of those talks is a waste of time. I am telling you as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. So, nyinyi wakamba, mngoje hiyo mazungumzo, mtakuja kutafuta sisi because there is nothing. Ile mazungumzo tangazo wametumwa, hakuna kitu hapo ya kuzungumza. Raila tayari alisema mambo yake. Alimalizia Mombasa. Hii ni mambo tu ya kuzungusha wa Kenya. Kuzungusha wa Kenya. There is nothing.
All right, so that's Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua yesterday speaking in Ukambani region. Nothing will come out of the talks as the country waits with a bated breath on some of those things that are expected to be discussed with the conversation. Of course, the discussion continuing on Friday. Let me begin with you, Kennedy Ondiek. When you're looking at, you know, the Deputy President talking about this, we have already been told by those people who are chosen to spearhead these talks that this is what we need. This dialogue is important and we need to have this conversation so that we can be able to move forward. So where do we stand when you have the national leader sort of dismissing a national dialogue that is ongoing?
Yeah, I want to start by saying this is a national leader and this is a member of the government, the Deputy President. And the talks, we have to know where they emanated from. Where did the talks begin? And what was the purpose for which the talks were set up? I want to say that while we look at what the Deputy President said, we also have to look at the anatomy of what is going on at Bomas. One, I agree that talks at Bomas were necessary because of the condition or the situation in which the country found itself. But I want also to agree with the Deputy President to some extent or to a greater extent because UDA or maybe Kenya Kwanza government is already planning to do what is supposed to be done to change several things or to make things work within the country. So I think pushing the government to, first of all, you know, the talks were not actually the interest of the government. The government was pushed to Bomas so that they agree because some people went carrying sufurias on their heads so that they be heard. But I can also tell you, the truth of the matter is that what is going on at Bomas is not actually the interest of even those who call for those talks. There are many things. I think the Deputy President has only given us the tip of an iceberg of what may be happened in Mombasa. And I think he cannot just wobble. He cannot just talk without having any reason. A frog does not jump on a broad daylight without an apparent reason. We know that. So when the Deputy President said that, I can tell you for a fact, look at what was on the table or what is on the table. They are even yet to conclude the agenda on the table. We don't even know what actually will be the list of the agenda out of that talk. I think the most important thing the Azimio coalition wanted was a handshake. But they didn't want to bring it forth. But now that it's not going to be discussed there, I'm sure according to the Deputy President, nothing will come out of that place because that handshake intention they had is not on the table. So I am very clear in my mind that the Deputy President is not wrong by indicating that nothing will come out of what is going on at Bomas simply because what the Azimio people wanted is not going to be part of the discussion at Bomas. At Bomas, they are going to discuss how to lower the cost of living. They are going to look at how to reorganize and restructure IEBC, reconstitute IEBC, and many other issues which were raised by other Kenyans who also brought their interests and going to form part of the agenda to be discussed there. I agree with the Deputy President that let us not hope for something big coming out of nothing, because the talks there are not going to deal with the big things which Azimio people wanted.
So are we not treating Kenyans to a circus here?
I don't know who is treating Kenyans to anything, because there's a time when Gola and his friends say Kenyans are on the streets because they have particular things. But I'm telling you, the government is working towards making things better, according to what I can see. Okay. There may be challenges as usual, but going by what I'm seeing in terms of the plans and programs, policies which are in place, I have no doubt that that Bomas talks, if it is not going to go around what those individuals wanted, which is known privately and individually.
Which you say is handshake.
Yeah, that's what they wanted, actually.
Right.
That's what, and that is what I want to add something. Post-election negotiations are not necessary. They were just subjecting Kenyans to post-election negotiations when they had also accepted to subject Kenyans to elections. Generally, you don't have to go for negotiations when you had exposed yourself to an election and lost. Whether fairly or unfairly, it was declared and the Supreme Court rubber-stamped it, and that is the highest court on land.
Okay. I want us to do this. So there's another bite that we have of the Deputy President as well speaking, but we'll run that when we take a quick break and then hear from the rest of the panelists as well on what they think is happening and where we are, especially when it comes to this national dialogue conversation that we are talking about. Stay with us. The hashtag is MLiveNTV.
Ametafuta rais juzi, hakuja na Kalonzo, hakuna mambo ya Kalonzo aliongea mambo yake. Yes, hakuna kitu ya Kalonzo alitaja, aliongea mambo yake, ya mtoto wake, ya bibi yake, ya watu yao. Sasa hii mazungumzo ametuma Kalonzo pale kwa agenda, hakuna maji ya Ukambani, hakuna mbolea, hakuna barabara. Kwa hiyo mazungumzo nini hapo nini Wakamba? Sasa Kalonzo kiongozi wa heshima ya Wakamba, mtu amesoma, dokta, mtu ya sheria, amepewa agenda kwenda kuzungumza mambo ya kuzunguka ramu. Huyu Raila hakuna kitu anatafuta, alitaka tumpatie serikali kuzungukate, tukasema hakuna. Alitaka ati handshake, tukamwambia hakuna. Akasema wapatie kazi na tatu, tukamwambia hakuna. Tukasema ukitaka pesa kidogo ya kukula we can discuss. Ukienda lipa aende akienda.
So that's Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua there. He was speaking in Machakos County during the burial of Anne Kaleke, the mother of Mwala MP Vincent Musyoka, who died at the age of 81 after quite a long illness. But he has escalated his battle with Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, calling on the Kamba community to ditch the former vice president, widely seen as the community's political kingpin, saying Musyoka would lose big in the planned all-party talks between the government and the opposition, saying nothing will come out of the talks if they are sending Kalonzo. And I say this as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Prof, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much, Zainab. I think that what's happening here is that the Deputy President is very close to being right. As far as I'm concerned, the discussion ended more or less in Mombasa, because unless Raila Odinga doesn't know what he wants, if you look at the condition he gave before, I want a dialogue akin to the National Accord. The best scenario was that for him, where by the time we are going for the National Accord, there was already Kofi Annan, who had been appointed, the structures were in place, it was sort of a national dialogue. And Operation Indogatuzi went in the media the very day they declared the bipartisan talk that this should not be bipartisan. Kenya is a multi-party democracy. So we needed a multi-partisan approach, not bipartisan. And Zainab, I just want to correct, as far as I'm concerned, it's not yet a national dialogue. It's a dialogue between two sides. In fact, more people ran for election more than the two guys. And in fact, less people voted. In fact, only maybe a third of the people voted, and they got a third of the total registered votes. Actually, they are not with Kenyans for me. if Raila Odinga and William Ruto are sincere, they should be able to come together. Then the other point I have is, which he says that government was forced to this discussion. Zainab, you know, in 2008, when Kibaki had negotiated with Raila, Kibaki never put his issues on the table because Kibaki was not complaining of anything. He said, I had won the election free and square. So it's only Raila who was presenting his claims. As far as I'm concerned, Kenya Kwanza was not on the street. Why is it that when we say dialogue, then they have 5 issues? Now they are actually, I don't know, 6 issues. Why do they have issues when they had no issue? So by telling you Kenya Kwanza had no issues is blatant lie, because why are they tabling 5 issues? Then for Raila Odinga, the mistake is that he went to the street with the Kenyans. Why not go to Bomas with the Kenyans? Because you need to go with the people you're in the seat with. How comes after the Kenyans has called it to the street, whether he was the one who called it, whether it's Kenyans who wanted it, he was supposed to go to Bomas with the same people who were with him on the street, and they could be represented in terms of civil society, private sector, public sector, religious bodies. There could be a representation to have a national dialogue. A national dialogue is not a dialogue between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. Kenya is larger than the 2 political parties. And I think that should have been well stated. And then last but not least, which I think is very critical here, I saw something like this might bring BBI too, which means bring back the reggae. If Kenya Kwanza campaign on the platform of we must stop reggae, and Azimio says no one can stop reggae, if they bring back the reggae, then Kenya Kwanza have lost legitimacy because they campaigned against BBI. If they ever want to talk about any item on BBI, in fact, one of them by having the Prime Secretary, which is Musalia Mudavadi, who actually is the Prime Minister, according to me, the status he has, with a budget of 751 million shillings a year. That's the same budget Raila had when he was a Prime Minister. So that stature, according to me, there's what you call these political people are playing us around. And I'm urging Kenyans, which will be very Solomonic, and evaluate and see it. Are these people for Kenyans or are they against Kenyans? And this talk, as far as I'm concerned, should solve the deep-seating issues so that we don't do it again. Remember, with Moi, Raila had MOU. With Kibaki, it was Nusumukate. With Uhuru, it was handshake. With Ruto, it is bipartisan. The next president will have something else. This is not the way to go. And I agree with you. We should end the post-election negotiation by solving the deep-seating issues. The deep-seating issue in Kenya is the governance structure, not the electoral system. The winner take it all. Now we have no opposition. They made a mistake by moving to a pure presidential system. And we need to go back. They want to bring opposition, meaning that they discovered by going for a pure presidential system, they made a mistake. So we should have a national dialogue leading to a referendum where laws will be constituted and changed through public initiative, not in Parliament, because Parliament has lost credibility. They have passed a draconian bill, which people are crying, and the very reason that they are. In fact, if you tell me, Ondieki, that we are in Bomas to discuss about cost of living, is a lie. For reason is that after passing the Finance Act, which increases cost of living, you can't go to Bomas to remove the Finance Act. And then at the same time, if at all, which I think is not the case, if at all Azimio wants to come inside the government as a way to solve cost of living, I can tell you, Zainab, you cannot reduce cost of living by marrying a second wife.
But the opposition says they don't want a power sharing agreement.
No, I'm trying to tell you,
right.
I'm not trying to tell Ondieki that cannot be true. If you are with your wife or husband, you are struggling to have a cost of living, no one can marry another wife and say, now with another wife now we can lower cost of living. So there should be no one coming into government. We need to address the deep-seating issues and the justice issue. Electoral system, governance system should be addressed. So the question is, what is the end game for Azimio? This is the main question that I'm still asking. What's their end game? Their end game is to try to correct the wrongs which are done. And if we say, let us move on, we have moved on for long. When Kibaki won the election, we said, now accept and move on. We moved on. But to which direction? Uhuru won the election, we're told, accept and move on. We moved on, but we are continuing moving on to the wrong direction. Then now, Kenya Kwanza has won. Another 10 years will be accept and move on. Moving on to where? So the justice issues must be addressed. We have a QMI report. We have TAGRC report. We have so many commission reports which have never been implemented. And the issues that are affecting Kenyans We know them. Why don't we be allowed as every person from Kenya to go present these things before the commission so that they can be addressed once and for all? Because we have insecurity issues, for example. In Sondu, there's a security issue. People are killed there. They are all emerging from the TRG's report, that area. We have issues in Baragoi. We have many, many issues. There's land issues in Mombasa. Yesterday I was there, where the governor wants to demolish houses just because he feels he needs to do them. People have title deeds that look like a piece of paper for wrapping meat. We have many, many issues which are
So you're saying the talks that are ongoing will not solve the issues
we
that
will not, because it is bipartisan.
All right. Yes, Hesbon, your thoughts?
First, I think based on the clip that you played, the Deputy President's clip, I think there are a number of things that we may want to point out. One, you know, the office of the Deputy President is part of the presidency. So it needs, you know, to be executed with the decorum that it deserves. You know, there is language or speak that is leadership, that speaks of the trust that Kenyans have bestowed on that office. And I think when the Deputy President has funds in a panel like this, he should be proud of himself, extremely proud of himself. Because one, you have a Deputy President who is telling us that they already have what they wanted from the talks. Yet from the beginning, it is the same Deputy President who has been against these talks. So at this point, it is pretentious, you know, and let me say, unfortunate that he is telling us that they already got what they wanted from the talk. Who are these people who already got what they wanted from the talk? You know, some of this rhetoric that we have from him are essentially even embarrassing the president himself, because he's casting aspersions to the fact that, you know, the president has already sealed a deal, you know, and it appears that he has sealed the deal at the expense of the aspirations of Kenyans. That is one. And then number two, I think they need to stop talking about this issue of the handshake, because both sides of the political divide have already made it unequivocally clear that they are not interested in the handshake. And I'll tell you, even Kenyans are not interested in the handshake, especially if the Kenya Kwanza government won on the basis of what the handshake government did, you know, in the last regime. Then that is enough reason to note that if Kenyans rejected the handshake duo, then it means Kenyans are not interested in the handshake. So they should just stop this thing of anyone is looking for the handshake. And then number three is the issue of going to funerals. I mean, you can't go to a funeral as a respected leader of this country and all you talk about is other leaders. I mean, it's even disrespectful, you know, to the person you went to mourn with. So that was a funeral. And if you just pick that clip out of that funeral, you know that it was a funeral because an individual who has gone to mourn, he's attacking other individuals. But let me leave that there because that is about the clip. Let me come to the germane issue, the issue of the bipartisan talk and whether it will morph into a national delegates convention. I will tell you this, and this is my opinion, this is what I'm seeing, that the political leadership will always get their interests. Irrespective of where you are, whether you are in an advanced democracy or an emerging democracy or even an autocratic system, the political elites will drive conversation and they will start with their interests. So let us assume that they have their interests, whatever those interests are. As Kenyans, we also have interests. And I think the biggest interest that Kenyans have today in this country, us as Kenyans, Kenyans are not outside there because we're all Kenyans, is to have a just electoral system, you know, that no one will have to tell anyone that the Supreme Court has made a determination on this. A just electoral system where everyone will see for themselves. So much so that no one will need to go and challenge.
But isn't that why we entrust that to the highest court in the land, which is the Supreme Court, to make that decision, which it already did?
Yes. And the reason why we have laws and ways of adjudicating is so that they are predictable systems, you know. But you can't say that we have the Supreme Court because we'll always have contested elections. That is a very defeatist attitude. The Supreme Court is there in case of a contested election. So it doesn't mean that we need to resign ourselves to the fact that we'll always have a contested election. There is a lot that we can do to ensure that Kenyans are not... I mean, for almost 7 days, Kenyans were on the edge of their seats because tallying was going on. And I don't think anyone is interested in that kind of tension during an electioneering period. But let me just say this. Prof has talked about the issue of governance and electoral justice, and I said that we don't need electoral justice, we just need to sort our governance issue. We live in a democracy, and the people who govern are the political players whose political party has won power. There is no way you're going to sort governance unless the people who get that power, the political party that wins that power, gets that mandate from the people. Unless there is a clear, legitimate and free process where if I get the power, I know that I've been given this power by the people, and if I don't serve the interest of the people, this power will go away. And my competitor knows that the only way I will get to power to serve the interest of the people is through the vote. The moment there's a just electoral system and you know it is through the vote, you will serve the people. In essence, what you will do is very simple. You'll sort governance. Because if you sort governance, no one will deny you the mandate from the vote. And I think when we keep saying that we had MOU, we had handshake, we had, and now we are talking about bipartisan talk, the bottom line is we've not sorted our electoral system.
So the issues are still there.
The issues are still there. And now that the bipartisan beat has started, we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans, how do we get into this space and make it a national convention? How do we take it from the political class? And, you know, on this here, I think we have people from the civil society, people with very brilliant minds. People, my friend here is a brilliant legal mind. How do we get Kenyans into a conversation that will sort these issues irrespective of what the political leadership thinks? And we are in that space. We just need to seize that space.
Okay, let's hear from Suleiman as well. And just to, I don't think we have that clip, but also yesterday, the president did actually speak on this matter as well. And I think what he said, if I can remember very well, he said, look, we are not up for any handshake. It's sort of echoing what the deputy president also had to say. So then where does this leave the people who look forward to sort of addressing these issues? I think the main contentious issues for Kenyans was the issue of the cost of living, which Azimio said was at the top of their own agenda. But really, if everyone agrees this is not a national conversation and it is just a conversation between two parties, political parties, for their own, agenda, political interest, so then what does that mean for us, Kenyans?
I think, Zainab, I'll start by saying that whatever we are witnessing points to mistrust in our institutions. It points to lack of faith in the very institutions that we have created through our laws. The very first institution is the institution called IEBC. IEBC actually oversaw an election. As a referee, it made its decision. That particular outcome was contested by one faction. Then there's a second institution called the judiciary, especially the Supreme Court. The outcome was contested at the Supreme Court level. There's a reason as to why equally we have that particular institution in our laws. And by the time we all move into that, we are subjecting ourselves to the institution called the Supreme Court through a presidential petition, maybe to challenge the outcome of a presidential election, means at the end of the day, we need to respect the outcome of that particular decision of the Supreme Court. The third institution, when we are from there, is the institution called the Parliament, whereby when you lose an election, you're supposed to form the opposition side, and you're supposed to be casting over checks and balances on the ruling regime. I think we are lacking these three. And we lacked these three when the handshake equally was done, because we ended up having a mongrel of a government and an opposition. You see, if these kind of talks that are ongoing, in the event they end up having a look at very critical issues, for example, the reconstitution of the membership of the IEBC, the procedure, how to lower the cost of living, because I understand there was the majoritarian aspect as to how the finance bill was passed in the House, trying to see how something can be done to lower the cost of living. If this kind of critical issues can be done by this brilliant technical committee or technical team to maybe come up with recommendations that will be actioned upon or acted upon, it will be a step in the right direction. But now we end up witnessing a scenario where we are told there was a meeting in Mombasa last evening or last night whereby the opposition leader has met the current president. Then from there we find a hush-hush whereby there are no longer discussions centered around what is going on. But we just see the ongoing discussions that are going around Bomas. If whatever will be discussed in Bomas will be done in good faith for the people of Kenya, recommendations will be formulated and will be forwarded for proper action by the respective institutions, beginning with Parliament, will be going a step in the right direction. I'm asking myself again, is that really the truth? Because we understand, we do not even know what happened what transpired between the former Prime Minister and the President when they met in Mombasa. The former Prime Minister did not even open up to Kenyans and tell us, this is what we discussed. I told the President, agendas 1, 2, 3.
Right.
We don't know yet. We are still in the dark. We find the Deputy President telling us someone somewhere was given, he has spoken about his personal interest that was catered for. Whatever you guys are witnessing is just a waste of time.
Right.
Trust me, this is the Deputy President of our Republic. This is a senior person who is well fed with the intelligence of what is going within our country. I think this is not a statement that should be making as on podiums. I think if he is telling us this, he should be serious about it. It is not just something that we need to wish away. No, it points to something. He's telling us whatever is going on in Bomas is a waste of time. And should we take it as such? I believe so, because our Deputy President, who we have elected alongside our President, is telling us. He is telling us something was cut. There was a deal that was cut in Mombasa, and that is done and done. Now, the big question is, the people of Kenya who have actually come out on the streets to protest the question of cost of living, has the issue been catered for? Not at all. Even when you look at the very serious issues that these guys are contesting in Bomas,
right,
the cost of living is below there. Whatever they're contesting up there are personal issues.
Okay.
And I think if we go this way, we will end up having a problem whereby we will lack opposition and we will not know who is in government. Finally, let me say this.
All right.
Our former Prime Minister is making a mistake which he has made previously. If he sits aside, works as an opposition leader, checks on the government, keeps telling Kenyans the weaknesses of this particular regime, by 2027, he will be the Dalian of the people. Mm-hmm. But right now, we do not know where he stands. And that is what has actually wasted his opportunity when we had gone for the polls last year, in 2022. So I think this time around, it's an opportunity for him again to step out of this government, to stop his dalliance towards this government. Focus on this government. This government has a lot of weaknesses, by the way. It is not doing anything at all for the people.
So we need a strong opposition.
We need
is what
a good opposition leader for us to have a proper check on this particular regime.
All right. Yes, Kennedy.
Zainab, I want to be very categorical here. That the spirit of honesty should guide our undertakings at any moment we are dealing with any matter that deals with the national affair of the people. Because we have the Constitution, which we promulgated and gave unto ourselves, not just for us, to ourselves, but also to our posterity. It is a document that's supposed to guide our interactions. And it is providing for every activity that is to lead us from point A to point B. I want to make it very categorical that the leader of opposition is not being honest to Kenyans. And the opposition brigades are also not being honest to Kenyans. And maybe I don't know whether I can be so wrong to make this remark, that there is so many deals, so many talks going on in the evenings and outside the cameras, which which Kenyans are not privy to. And because these are leaders, they meet in corridors, they talk. There are so many things they talk. Some of the leaders report to some of us what they discuss. But I can tell you that they are not discussing anything dealing with Kenyans. Because on July 22nd last year, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga was being interviewed, I don't know, with one of these channels. I think it was NTV and the rest. When he was flagged by his deputy then, who's still the deputy, Martha Karua, when they were asked about the cost of living, I can be very clear on that date. It was on 22nd of July last year, just a few days to elections, when they were very sure that they had every machinery to win and they were hoping to be in power. They convinced Kenyans who voted for them that cost of living cannot go down because of the cost of oil in the international market. He said it, that is because of international situation, we cannot have the cost of fuel going down. I don't know what miracle was supposed to happen with William Ruto being the president, changing that thing the way they want. That is the insincere nature of our political class. They were lying to Kenyans, and they are still lying to Kenyans because they are exposing Kenyans to what they know cannot happen. Two, we went to election. And when they started demonstration, they were talking about server. Now they are not talking about server because they have realized that server is not possible to be seen. That means that once we cannot trust the processes that we have, it cannot be one individual. And I'm being a Kenyan. Kenyans are tired with one individual who is never satisfied with every process we carry out. And when you talk about reports of commissions, the same individual has been agitating for those reports. The same individual got into government for 5 years through handshake. We didn't even hear him talking about those reports. We didn't hear him talking about the challenges facing Kenyans. The only thing they did was to work like brothers, and they were ever brothers, and they remained brothers until they lost like brothers. I can tell you the humble truth that Kenyans must learn that when these people talk more than they talk on TV. In fact, they talk individually more than they talk on TV. And I want to persuade Kenyans that let us deal with our situations and wait for only ourselves to make our efforts. Like it is said, if we want to produce more food, we have to go to the farms.
All right.
If you go to our regions like Nyanza, for example, you realize that these our leaders told our people not to take the fertilizers because they claimed the fertilizers were bad. The other regions took fertilizers, and now they are going to get serious harvest. Our area, we are not going to have better harvest. So I am making
that's an allegation. Can you substantiate this?
I can substantiate because just like you have produced those videos, there are also their videos when they were saying Bolaya was bad. That is what they said.
Okay, I can't remember that, but okay, we'll try and look for that.
First of all,
okay, Prof, very quickly, right?
Let us correct some misnomer here. Fertilizer is not available to all people in all counties. There are some people who are, it's clear, because you cannot send fertilizer even to where people are not grazing.
How so?
You can't send fertilizer to a place where people are pastoralists. You send it to where agriculture is. If the government sends it to where people are fishing, fertilizer, do you fish need fertilizer? I'm saying...
Is he saying in Nyanza we don't farm?
No, just listen. I'm saying fertilizer is not for all areas. There must be agricultural zones. It's clear, it's actually logical.
But isn't it for farmers who actually are in need? It doesn't necessarily mean it was meant for...
Yeah, there are some regions that were not given fertilizer. We can go to details because we don't want to go till and tell you how they were segmented. It might not be good to tell people what we are not sure about. Now, on my point here, you talked about the presence of Supreme Court to help when things don't work, Zainab. My point is, Supreme Court is like an insurance, that you have it, but you don't need it. If you take up a medical insurance, you don't have to pray to be sick to use it. So the more we are going to Supreme Court means there's something wrong somewhere. Each and every time after the election, everyone weighs. Like, during the election, I was in Bomas, Zainab. I saw lawyers in a room preparing for Supreme Court before results are announced. I can mention these law firms. Why do they know? It's like we have a Supreme Court that we must use. Insurance, for medical insurance, you should have it and not use it. I've not used my insurance for 5 years and I'm happy even if I'm paying. Now, the second thing on governance... We have
1 minute, so I'll give you 30 seconds. I'm going to be done
in 1 minute.
Right.
On the thing, Hezbon, when I told you about the issue of governance structure, I don't just mean that who wins election. Governance structure means here that we need to have the right framework where there is a strong opposition and there's a strong government. And these things of minority and majority is not working. Pure presidential doesn't work. And then lastly, we need the institutions around governance to work. For example, is Parliament independently Parliament? Is judiciary independently judiciary? Is IBC independent? It begins with that independent. Is it really independent? If it is, how comes after the election all commissioners have to chase away? How do you have a commission which is independent that after election they are gone? You had claims whereby they said so-and-so was going to Bomas to manipulate Chebukati. It means those institutions are not independent and they are not allowed to function. So what I'm asking for is, we don't have IBC now. Any by-election cannot take place. They are due. Why is it not there? Because the political class have disagreed and they have been thrown away. So that's what I want. Independent institution which has got financial independence, judicial independence, budget independence, security independence, physical security, among other independence, to allow them do their work independently.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Hezbon and Suleiman, I'm sorry, but we're almost out of time. Maybe 30 seconds each as we wind up. Very quickly, please.
One, I think if we have to be categorical in what we are saying, we also have to be alive to the fact that sometimes we are blinded by selective perception and selective retention. We see what we want and we retain what we want. I think before the election, the prevailing circumstances globally were very clear. And I think the points that were made by the Azimio team as they were campaigning is that there are no quick fixes. And that's the reason why President Uhuru's government had subsidies. The government that came in place immediately did away with those ones, and they are trying to reinvent the wheel by bringing them. And I think the critical question is, it's not a question of whether the cost of living is coming down or the cost of living is going up. It's a question of, this is a government that rode on getting people out of poverty, of dealing with the hustler issues. And we have a responsibility to remind this government that they promised hustlers certain things and they need to deliver those things. If they promised bearable cost of living, they need to deliver that. And then lastly, I think we need to run away from this idea of personalizing things and being very categorical on individuals. This is a Kenyan issue. And I think, let me just reiterate what I've just said, that if leaders are not honest, if leaders are not doing the right thing, it is not for us to pontificate. The stand that leaders take is a function of the electorate. We just need to vote them out.
Okay, thank you, Suleiman.
I think for me, I'll just say whatever that is ongoing in Bomas ought to be honest, and it ought to be people-centered. And we look forward to having a very honest discussion there that has the main aim or goal of having an impact on the people. That is what I'm looking at. I'm looking forward to that particular discussion by the technical committee, together with these leaders who are coalescing around that discussion. But it is something that we are always hopeful that will be in the best interest of our people. And
we'll continue to keep our eyes traded on those particular talks as they continue on the Daily Nation. I'll leave you with this. So, you know, as they're inside having the talks, you can see the political babs outside the doors of Bomas of Kenya, the rungus and the sufurias, you know, sort of making exchanges out there. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. And of course, that was our conversation this morning. Professor Fred Ogola, Suleiman Bashir, Hezbon Owila, and Kennedy Ondiek. And there's so much we still had to talk about, but seriously, time was was not on our side. But can continue having this conversation online. The hashtag we're using is MLiveNTV at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail. Your world is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. Have yourself a good morning and great day.